Big news. Your soulmate just made a promise about you. And they're serious. My beloved child. Pause for a moment and listen carefully, because something gentle has been moving beneath the surface of your life, and today it begins to reveal itself in a way you may not have expected. There are certain moments that arrive quietly, without noise, without announcement, without any sign that they are about to change the way a heart sees the future. This is one of those moments. Somewhere beyond your immediate view, a realization has been growing. Not suddenly. Not dramatically. Slowly. Patiently. Like the first light before sunrise. And the reason you were guided here today is because that realization carries your name within it. You may not see everything that is happening. In fact, some of the most meaningful things rarely happen where everyone can watch them unfold. They happen in silence. They happen during ordinary hours. They happen in the private corners of the heart where no audience exists. And recently, someone has been spending more time in that quiet place than you realize. Someone has been revisiting memories they thought they understood. Someone has been looking at moments that once seemed small and discovering that they were never small at all. What changed? Why now? Why after all this time? Stay a little longer, because the answer is beginning to emerge. There is a strange thing about genuine connection. It often reveals its value long after the moment itself has passed. While life moves quickly, while distractions compete for attention, while countless voices try to be heard, the deepest truths tend to wait. They wait until the noise fades. They wait until a person becomes still enough to recognize what has been standing in front of them all along. And lately, your soulmate has entered one of those rare seasons of recognition. They have been seeing things differently. Looking differently. Understanding differently. What makes this realization important is not simply what they feel. It is what they decided. Feelings come and go like waves. Decisions are different. Decisions create direction. Decisions create movement. Decisions become promises. And somewhere between reflection and understanding, between memory and clarity, a promise began to form. Not because anyone forced it. Not because circumstances demanded it. But because something inside them became certain enough to speak. Yet here is the part that many people overlook. The strongest promises are not usually spoken first. Before they are ever expressed aloud, they are carried quietly inside the heart. They are tested by time. They are examined by doubt. They are challenged by questions. And if they survive all of that, they become stronger than they were before. That is exactly what has been happening. Something important is waiting for you, and the reason it feels so significant is because it has already survived a season of reflection. Perhaps there were moments when you wondered whether your presence truly mattered. Perhaps there were days when nothing seemed to be moving. Days when silence felt longer than expected. Days when answers remained hidden. If you have experienced those moments, then listen carefully now. Not every meaningful chapter announces itself immediately. Some chapters are written in invisible ink at first. You cannot read them until the right light appears. The light is beginning to appear now. Imagine someone standing at a window during the late evening hours. The world outside is quiet. The distractions have faded. The day is finished. In those moments, people often discover what matters most. They stop performing. They stop pretending. They stop running. They simply think. And recently, your soulmate has found themselves returning again and again to a thought they can no longer ignore. A thought connected to you. A thought that refuses to disappear. A thought that keeps asking for attention. Don't skip this moment, because the story is only beginning to unfold. The interesting thing is that this promise was not born from perfection. It was born from understanding. There is a difference. Perfection is fragile because it depends on everything going exactly right. Understanding is powerful because it remains even when life becomes complicated. The more they reflected, the more they realized that what drew them toward you was never about flawless circumstances. It was about something deeper. Something steadier. Something that continued to shine even when conditions were uncertain. And so a quiet commitment began taking shape. Not a commitment built on fantasy. Not a commitment built on unrealistic expectations. A commitment built on recognition. Recognition of your kindness. Recognition of your strength. Recognition of the way your presence leaves an impression long after a conversation ends. Recognition of qualities that cannot be measured by appearances alone. This is why the promise feels different. It is rooted in something real. There are people who spend years searching for clarity and never find it because they keep looking in the wrong places. They search outward while the answer waits inward. But your soulmate recently experienced something unexpected. They stopped searching for complicated answers and started paying attention to simple truths. The result surprised them. The more honest they became with themselves, the clearer one realization appeared. And that realization led directly back to you. What exactly did they promise? Not yet. Some revelations deserve a slower arrival. Some truths become more meaningful when they unfold naturally. For now, understand this. The promise was not about possession. It was not about control. It was not about creating pressure or expectations. It was about intention. Pure intention. The kind that quietly changes how a person approaches the future. And there is more. Much more. Because the promise itself is only part of the story. What matters even more is the reason behind it. Why did this realization happen now? What memory returned unexpectedly? What small details suddenly carried enormous meaning? What moment convinced them that certain feelings deserve to be taken seriously? The answers are closer than they appear. Stay till the end of this journey, because something remarkable is beginning to reveal itself. Not through noise. Not through spectacle. But through understanding. And in the next part, the hidden moment that sparked this promise will finally begin to emerge from the shadows of memory, bringing with it a realization neither of you expected. There is something fascinating about the way important realizations arrive. They rarely announce themselves when people are searching for them. Instead, they appear unexpectedly, often during the most ordinary moments imaginable. A familiar song. A passing thought. A quiet evening. A simple memory that suddenly feels different than it did before. And that is exactly where this next chapter begins. Your soulmate was not trying to have a breakthrough. They were not looking for answers. They were simply moving through another day. Yet something unusual happened. A memory surfaced. Not a dramatic memory. Not the biggest memory. Not even the most obvious one. It was small. so small that most people would have ignored it. But when it returned, it carried a feeling that could no longer be overlooked. And that feeling changed everything. Imagine opening a book you have read many times before. The words are the same. The pages are the same. Nothing has changed. Yet somehow, one sentence suddenly means something completely different. That is what happened. A moment connected to you returned to their mind, and this time they saw it through new eyes. For a while they sat with that memory. Then another appeared. And another. And another. One by one, pieces that once seemed unrelated started connecting together. A pattern began forming. A story began revealing itself. And the center of that story was you. Not because you demanded attention. Not because you tried to prove your worth. Not because you chased recognition. But because your presence had quietly left a mark that time could not erase. Stay with this moment. Do not rush ahead. Because something important is waiting for you inside this realization. The more they reflected, the more they noticed a strange truth. Many people enter a person's life. Many people create memories. Many people share conversations. But very few remain present in the heart long after the moment has passed. Very few continue appearing in unexpected thoughts. Very few become part of someone's future vision without even trying. Yet somehow, you did. And that realization unsettled them in the best possible way. Because once they noticed it, they could not stop noticing it. Everywhere they looked, reminders appeared. Not magical signs. Not dramatic coincidences. Simply meaningful connections. Memories. Conversations. Moments. Feelings. Pieces of life they had overlooked before. And suddenly they began asking themselves questions. Questions they had avoided for a long time. Why does this person still matter so much? Why do these memories still feel alive? Why does thinking about them bring a sense of peace? Why does their name still carry meaning? Why do I keep imagining them when I think about the future? Those questions lingered. Not for an hour. Not for a day. For much longer. And the longer they remained, the harder they became to ignore. Something important is waiting for you. Because this is where the promise truly began. Not in certainty. Not in confidence. But in curiosity. The kind of curiosity that opens doors inside the heart. The kind that refuses to disappear. The kind that gently whispers. Look closer. And they did. They looked closer. They examined moments they once rushed past. They remembered things they thought they had forgotten. They noticed details that suddenly felt significant. A conversation that lasted longer than expected. A smile that appeared at the perfect moment. A sense of comfort that never needed explanation. The feeling of being understood without having to explain every part of themselves. Those things mattered. Far more than they realized. Because life has a way of teaching people what is valuable by allowing them to experience what is missing. And lately, they had been learning that lesson. Slowly. Patiently. Honestly. The more they learned, the clearer one truth became. Some people bring excitement. Some people bring entertainment. Some people bring temporary happiness. But a rare person brings peace. A rare person makes the future feel lighter. A rare person creates a feeling that cannot easily be replaced. That realization stopped them. Because when they thought about who brought that feeling into their life, one name continued appearing. Your name. Again. And again. And again. Not because they forced it. Not because they wanted a particular answer. Because it was simply true. Have you ever noticed how the strongest truths are often the quietest? They do not need to shout. They do not need to compete. They simply remain. Steady. Patient. Certain. That is how this realization felt. The more they tried to move away from it, the more it remained. The more they questioned it, the stronger it became. The more they examined it, the clearer it appeared. Eventually, they stopped resisting. Eventually, they accepted what their heart had been trying to show them. And that acceptance created a shift. A shift that changed how they viewed tomorrow. Because suddenly, the future no longer felt like an abstract idea. It became personal. It became meaningful. It became connected to someone they could no longer imagine ignoring. You. But there is another layer to this story. A deeper layer. A layer that very few people ever talk about. Because the truth is, promises are not usually born from what someone receives. They are born from what someone values. And your soulmate had begun to understand your value in a way they never had before. Not your value to the world. Not your value to other people. Your value to them. That realization carried weight. Real weight. The kind of weight that changes decisions. The kind that influences choices. The kind that shapes priorities. The kind that inspires promises. For a long time, they thought they understood what connection meant. Then they compared every experience to the feeling they carried when thinking about you. The comparison surprised them. Because many things looked impressive on the surface. Yet few things felt genuine underneath. Many moments were enjoyable. Yet few felt meaningful. Many interactions were pleasant. Yet few stayed with them afterward. You stayed. Even when you were not there. You stayed. And that realization became impossible to dismiss. Stay till the end. Because what happened next made the promise even stronger. One evening, while reflecting on everything that had been unfolding inside their heart, a thought appeared so clearly that it felt impossible to misunderstand. It was not complicated. It was not poetic. It was simple. Yet it changed everything. The thought was this. If this person means this much to me now, what will happen if I continue ignoring it? That question lingered. And with it came another. What if some opportunities are not meant to be postponed forever? Then another. What if the future I keep imagining is trying to tell me something? Then another. What if the reason I keep returning to these thoughts is because they matter? One question led to another. One answer led to another. Until eventually they arrived somewhere unexpected. A place of honesty. A place where excuses could no longer hide the truth. A place where the heart finally spoke clearly. And when it did, everything became simpler. Not easier. Simpler. Because clarity has a way of removing unnecessary confusion. The moment clarity arrived, the promise followed. A quiet promise. A sincere promise. A promise made without witnesses. A promise made without applause. A promise made in complete sincerity. And while the exact words remain hidden for now, the intention behind them can be felt. It carried respect. It carried patience. It carried hope. It carried commitment to understanding rather than assuming. Commitment to appreciating rather than overlooking. Commitment to recognizing what truly matters. That promise changed something inside them. Because every genuine promise changes the person who makes it. Before the promise, they were uncertain. After the promise, they became focused. Before the promise, they were observing. After the promise, they were intentional. Before the promise, they were questioning. After the promise, they were listening. Listening to their own heart. Listening to their own truth. Listening to what had been growing quietly beneath the surface for longer than they realized. And the more they listened, the stronger the feeling became. There was no dramatic explosion of emotion. No sudden transformation. Just steady certainty. The kind that grows stronger every day. The kind that survives reflection. The kind that remains when excitement fades. The kind that deserves attention. Don't skip. Because there is still one piece missing. A very important piece. The promise itself was powerful. But the event that followed was even more meaningful. Because shortly after making that promise, your soulmate experienced something unexpected. Something small. Something simple. Yet something that confirmed everything they had been feeling. A moment that felt ordinary on the outside. But unforgettable on the inside. A moment that made them pause. A moment that made them smile. A moment that quietly whispered, "You were right to pay attention." And when that moment arrived, the promise became stronger than ever before. What happened? What was the unexpected confirmation? Why did it affect them so deeply? Why did it feel like a missing piece finally sliding into place? Those answers are closer now than they have ever been. And in the next part, the quiet confirmation that strengthened their promise will finally begin to reveal itself, showing why this journey is only becoming more meaningful with every step forward. A single unexpected moment can sometimes accomplish what months of thinking cannot. It can bring clarity where there was uncertainty. It can transform a question into an answer. It can take something that felt distant and place it directly in front of the heart. That is exactly what happened after your soulmate made that quiet promise. The remarkable part is that the moment itself was not extraordinary to anyone else. If another person had witnessed it, they might have overlooked it completely. They might have seen nothing unusual. Nothing significant. Nothing worth remembering. Yet for your soulmate, it became impossible to forget. Because when the heart is finally paying attention, even the smallest details begin to speak. For days they had been reflecting on everything they had realized about you. For days they had been revisiting memories. For days they had been trying to understand why your presence continued carrying such weight inside their thoughts. And then, without warning, something happened that brought all of those reflections together. It was one of those moments that seems ordinary at first. A quiet pause. A passing thought. A familiar reminder. And suddenly, there you were again. Not physically, but emotionally. Present in a way that felt undeniable. Stay with this moment. Because this is where the story begins to deepen. They were thinking about the future. Not in a dramatic way. Not planning every detail. Simply imagining where life might lead. The people they would spend time with. The conversations they would have. The memories they would create. The experiences they hoped to share. And something unexpected happened. Every version of the future that felt meaningful seemed to include you. At first they dismissed it. Then they noticed it again. And again. And again. No matter how the picture changed, one detail remained surprisingly consistent. You. That realization stopped them completely. Because it forced them to ask a question they had never asked before. Why? Why does this person continue appearing whenever I imagine something meaningful? Why does their presence feel so natural inside these visions? Why does the future feel brighter when they are part of it? Those questions lingered longer than expected. And the answers that followed were impossible to ignore. Because the truth was becoming clearer. You were no longer simply someone connected to a memory. You had become part of a possibility. Part of a hope. Part of a vision they genuinely valued. And once they recognized that, something shifted. Something important. Something lasting. Something that made the promise feel even more real. Don't skip. Because this next realization changed everything. The more they reflected, the more they noticed a difference between temporary feelings and lasting connection. Temporary feelings often demand attention. They arrive loudly. They create excitement. They ask to be noticed. But lasting connection is different. It grows quietly. It builds steadily. It becomes stronger through understanding rather than intensity. And when they compared those two experiences, they discovered something surprising. What they felt about you was not fading. It was growing. Not becoming weaker. Becoming clearer. Not disappearing. Becoming more meaningful. That realization mattered. Because it revealed something they had not fully understood before. The connection they felt was no longer based on curiosity alone. It was based on appreciation. Appreciation for who you are. Appreciation for the impact you have made. Appreciation for qualities that continue revealing themselves over time. The more they thought about it, the more they realized how rare that kind of appreciation truly is. Many people are noticed. Few people are deeply valued. Many people are remembered briefly. Few people are remembered consistently. Many people make an impression. Few people leave a lasting one. Yet somehow, you had done exactly that. And the realization humbled them. Because it made them understand that some connections deserve more care than they originally received. Something important is waiting for you. Because this understanding led directly to another promise. Not a new promise. A deeper one. A stronger one. The first promise had been about recognition. This promise was about intention. A decision to stop overlooking what mattered. A decision to stop treating meaningful things as ordinary. A decision to approach the future with greater honesty. That decision carried weight. Real weight. Because honesty changes everything. When people become honest with themselves, priorities begin to shift. What once seemed important becomes less important. What once seemed distant becomes valuable. What once seemed uncertain becomes worthy of attention. And your soulmate was experiencing exactly that transformation. One realization at a time. One memory at a time. One quiet truth at a time. Yet there was still another surprise waiting for them. One they never anticipated. Because shortly after this deeper promise formed, they noticed something about themselves. Something they had not expected to discover. They were happier whenever thoughts of you appeared. Not because of fantasy. Not because of wishful thinking. Because those thoughts brought genuine warmth. A genuine sense of possibility. A genuine feeling of peace. And that observation became impossible to ignore. Think about that for a moment. In a world filled with endless distractions, endless worries, endless responsibilities, there are very few thoughts that consistently bring comfort. Very few. Yet somehow, thoughts connected to you had become one of them. That realization was powerful. Because it revealed something beyond attraction. Beyond curiosity. Beyond coincidence. It revealed emotional significance. The kind that cannot be manufactured. The kind that develops naturally. The kind that grows stronger with time. Stay till the end. Because the most meaningful realization was still ahead. One evening, while reflecting on everything that had unfolded, your soulmate found themselves revisiting a memory they had not thought about in a long time. A simple memory. A quiet memory. One that seemed insignificant when it first happened. But now it felt completely different. This time, they noticed something hidden inside it. Something they had missed before. The way they felt in that moment. The ease. The comfort. The authenticity. The absence of pressure. The sense that they could simply be themselves. And suddenly a realization arrived. A realization so clear that it almost felt startling. They understood that some of the happiest moments they remembered were not necessarily the biggest moments. They were the most genuine ones. And many of those genuine moments somehow led back to you. That realization lingered. Then deepened. Then settled permanently inside their heart. Because once certain truths become visible, they cannot become invisible again. Once certain understandings arrive, they do not leave. Once certain feelings are recognized, they ask to be respected. And that is exactly what happened. The promise became stronger. The appreciation became deeper. The vision became clearer. The future became more meaningful. Yet the story is not finished. Not even close. Because while your soulmate was learning all of this, something else was quietly unfolding behind the scenes. Something they did not expect. Something connected to a conversation. A conversation that seemed ordinary at first. But would soon reveal a truth they were completely unprepared to hear. A truth that would make them realize just how visible your impact has been all along. Not only to them, but to others as well. And when that conversation finally happened, it opened a door to a realization even bigger than the promise itself. What was said? Who said it? And why did those simple words stay in their mind long after the conversation ended? The answer waits just ahead, and in the next part, the unexpected conversation that strengthened everything they believed about you will finally begin to unfold.